Somewhere in America right now, there is a person holding a piece of paper worth more money than they will ever be able to picture in their head. And within 5 years, there is a real chance they lose almost all of it. Not because the numbers were wrong, not because the ticket was fake, but because of what they did or didn't do in the hours right after they won. So here's a question for you before we go any further. If you won $250 million tomorrow morning, what is the very first thing you would do? Would you call your family? Would you quit your job on the spot? Would you post it online? Type your honest answer in the comments, because by the end of this video, you might realize that answer would have cost you everything. Before we get into it, if stories like this pull you in, the ones about sudden wealth, human nature, and the decisions that quietly separate the winners from the cautionary tales, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here, and if you know someone who talks about what I'd do if I won the lottery, send them this video. They need to see it before they ever get the chance to find out the hard way. Let's start with the mistake almost nobody sees coming, because it happens before you even leave the gas station. In January of 2018, a woman in New Hampshire matched all 6 numbers on a Powerball ticket worth $559 million, one of the largest jackpots in state history. And like most of us would, in the excitement of the moment, she did exactly what the back of the ticket told her to do. She signed it. Here's the problem. In New Hampshire and in most states, a signed lottery ticket is a legal claim of ownership. The second her name went on that slip of paper, she had effectively given up any chance of collecting the prize privately. She wanted to stay anonymous, for very real reasons. Once people know you're suddenly worth over $500 million, you become a target. For scammers, for long-lost relatives, for lawsuits, sometimes for people far more dangerous than that. So she had to do something most winners never have to do. She sued the New Hampshire Lottery Commission. Her lawyers argued that she should be allowed to white out her own signature and instead claim the prize through a trust, so her identity would never be tied to the money in public record. It went all the way to the state Supreme Court, and after months of legal battles, she won. She collected the full amount through something called the Good Karma Family Trust, and to this day, most people don't know her real name. She won that fight, but here's the thing. It was a fight she never should have had to have in the first place. If she had paused for even 10 minutes before signing that ticket, if she had taken a photo, locked it somewhere safe, and called a lawyer first, she could have avoided months of stress and a very public legal battle. That single moment, pen touching paper, is where a lot of winners make their first unforced error. Think about what that ticket actually is in the minutes right after the numbers match. It's an unsigned, unclaimed piece of paper worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. And legally, it belongs to whoever is physically holding it. No name attached, no ID required, nothing tying it to a real person yet. That's actually a strange kind of power. It means you, and only you, get to decide how and when your identity enters the picture. The lottery offices won't slow down for you and explain that, because their process is built for speed, not for protecting your privacy. Taking those first 10 or 20 minutes to just breathe before you sign anything isn't paranoia. It's the one window where you still have full control over how the rest of this story plays out. Now let's talk about someone who did almost everything right, because his story is the blueprint most financial advisors point to when they talk about how to actually keep lottery money. In 2005, a 33-year-old fitness instructor named Brad Duke was working at a gym in Idaho. Ordinary job, ordinary life. Then he won a Powerball jackpot worth $220 million. Most people in that position go straight to the lottery office within days, sometimes hours. Brad didn't. He went quiet. Instead of rushing to claim the money, he spent his first weeks building something most winners never think about: a team. Not friends, not family members who suddenly started calling. An actual professional team. A tax attorney, a corporate attorney, a banker, a group of accountants, and crucially, A fiduciary financial advisor, someone who is legally required by law to act in his best interest, not to sell him products for a commission. By the time he was done, Brad had close to 20 professionals working to protect and grow his money before he spent a single dollar of it. And here's why that matters so much. The moment your name is attached to a jackpot like that, you become, without exaggeration, the most interesting person in every room you walk into. Old classmates resurface. Investment guys with can't-miss opportunities start calling. Even people you've never met start asking for a piece. If you don't already have your own people in your corner, people who are legally bound to protect you, you are walking into that storm completely alone. There's a specific reason that word fiduciary matters so much, and it's worth slowing down on. Plenty of people who call themselves financial advisors are actually just salespeople with a nicer title. They can legally point you toward products that pay them the biggest commission, even if it's not the best option for you. A fiduciary can't do that. They are bound by law to act in your interest first, above their own paycheck. For someone sitting on a 9-figure fortune, that single distinction can be worth tens of millions of dollars over a lifetime. Brad understood that before he ever touched a dime, which is exactly why he built his team around professionals who were legally required to protect him rather than sell to him. Brad chose the lump sum option, which came out to around $125 million before taxes, and instead of treating it like a paycheck, he treated it like seed capital. He put a large portion into safer investments like municipal bonds and used another portion for more aggressive plays, all guided by his team. His stated goal wasn't to buy things, it was to grow the fortune toward $1 billion. Years later, reports showed he was still financially healthy, still building, long after most lottery winners had already run out of money. Now here's my honest take on why Brad's story worked when so many others didn't. It wasn't luck, and it wasn't even really about the money itself. It was about ego. Brad Duke didn't let the win rewrite his identity overnight. He stayed the same guy who ran the spin class, just now with a financial team behind him. Most people who lose it all do so because the money changes who they think they are within days. They start making decisions as the millionaire version of themselves instead of the person who actually built stability up to that point. If you ask me, that mental shift, thinking you're suddenly a different person, is the real root cause behind almost every lottery horror story you've ever heard. Which brings us to the most painful example in modern lottery history because it shows exactly what happens when none of these safeguards are in place. On Christmas Eve of 2002, a man named Jack Whitaker won a Powerball jackpot worth $314 million in West Virginia. At the time, state law forced winners to come forward publicly. He had to stand in front of cameras, give his name, show his face, and let the entire country know exactly how much money he now had. Whitaker wasn't reckless with intentions. He pledged millions of dollars to charity. He tried to do good with the money. But the moment his identity became public, his life turned into a nightmare. He was robbed multiple times, once at a strip club where over $500,000 in cash and checks was stolen from his vehicle. He faced a constant stream of lawsuits, from people claiming they deserved a piece of his fortune to people simply trying to exploit his sudden fame. His family was hit by a string of devastating personal tragedies in the years that followed. He later said, in more than one interview, that he wished he had torn the ticket up the moment he realized what it was. Let that sink in. A man who won $314 million said he would rather have never won at all. Anonymity isn't paranoia, it's armor. And Whitaker walked into public life with none of it on. Now compare his path to that New Hampshire woman who fought in court specifically to avoid the exact fate that Whitaker lived through. Same country, similar jackpot range, completely different outcomes, all because of how the money was claimed. Let's talk about a decision every single winner has to make. One that sounds simple on the surface, but actually determines the entire financial trajectory of their life. Lump sum or annuity. When you win a massive jackpot, the number flashing across the news is almost never the number you actually receive. That headline figure is the annuity total, paid out slowly over 30 years. The lump sum, the amount you'd get right now in cash, is usually close to half of that advertised number. When someone won a $1.5 billion Mega Millions jackpot back in October of 2023, the lump sum cash option was only around $877 million, still an enormous fortune, but a very different number from the one on the billboard. So which option is smarter? Honestly, there's no universal answer, and anyone who tells you there is one is oversimplifying it. The annuity works almost like a forced discipline plan. 30 years of guaranteed payments that make it nearly impossible to blow through everything at once. The lump sum gives you control and the potential to grow your money faster, but only if you actually invest it wisely instead of spending it like a paycheck. Brad Duke took the lump sum because he had a real plan for every dollar of it before he even claimed the prize. That's the difference. It's not about which option is objectively better, it's about whether you have people and a plan ready to guide that money the moment it lands in your account. And that leads us to what might be the single hardest move on this entire list, the one almost nobody has the discipline to actually follow through on. Do nothing major for at least 6 months. I know how that sounds. You just became instantly wealthy, and every instinct in your body is screaming at you to quit your job tomorrow, buy the house, buy the car, and start handing out life-changing checks to everyone you love. That impulse, that first week high, is exactly what quietly destroys people. The smartest winners impose what's essentially a cooling-off period on themselves. 6 months, sometimes a full year, of making 0 major purchases and 0 major life changes. No new house, no new car, no massive gifts that can't be undone, because the version of you sitting there in the first few days after winning is not thinking clearly. Nobody would be. And decisions made in that emotional fog tend to become the decisions people regret most. This is exactly the step Jack Whittaker skipped. He had good intentions and real generosity, but there was no pause, no wall between his sudden wealth and his impulses. And within a handful of years, both the fortune and the peace of mind that came with it were gone. Compare that to Brad Duke, who kept living a relatively normal life while his team quietly built the structure around him, and who years later was still financially secure, still growing what he had. The difference wasn't intelligence, it was patience. If you ask me, that's the part of this story people underestimate the most. We love to imagine winning the lottery as the ultimate solution to every problem, but what these real cases show us, again and again, is that the money itself was never the hard part. Getting it is pure chance. Keeping it, protecting it, and not letting it quietly unravel your entire life, that's a skill. And it's a skill that has almost nothing to do with financial genius and everything to do with slowing down. Secure the ticket the right way before you sign anything. Build your professional team before you ever walk into a lottery office. Claim the money as quietly and privately as the law allows. Understand exactly what you're choosing between lump sum and annuity before you pick one. And then, the hardest part of all, sit still for 6 months and let the plan catch up to the money. None of these moves are about picking better numbers or getting lucky twice. They're about what happens in the silence right after the luck runs out, when the actual decisions begin. So here's the real question worth sitting with. If the money landed in your life tomorrow, would you have the discipline to do nothing for 6 months? Let me know what you honestly think down in the comments. And if this kind of story, real people, real fortunes, real consequences, is something you want more of, make sure you're subscribed because we cover stories exactly like this every single week. Like this video if you made it to the end, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one.